The new game I bought myself to celebrate something which we can talk about later is Fuel, which is an open-world off-road racing game made by Codemasters, I think it is. So I went into this with thinking, I really like Burnout, I really like MotorStorm, and this seems to combine the two together. It's off-road racing in an open-world environment, and not just any open world, this is the largest open world in any video game.
So, pretty much the perfect game for you.
Kind of. I mean, if
it's
you think
really
about...
larger than San Andreas?
Apparently it is. I mean, I'm not exactly sure because I've not played San Andreas, but you know in Burnout Paradise, you can get from, say, Big Sur Island to the wind farm, which is basically the furthest distance you can go in about 15 minutes or so. It takes slightly longer than that to get between two of the base camps of the different zones, which are right next to each other in this game. And there are, 12 or so of these things. I'm fairly confident to get from the diagonal, from one corner of the other to the other on the map diagonally, it would take you a good 3 or 4 hours to drive that far.
My God, that's incredible.
It is immense.
That's crazy.
And it's good that they do some things to make it easier. As I said, it's split up into different zones which are vaguely themed around things. So there's one which is vaguely about the beach, except obviously because it's so huge, it can't all be the beach. And, that sort of thing. And you have the base camps where you get your missions from, or your challenges and your races and all that sort of thing. And you also have spawn points, which are just helipads, effectively. And if you go into the map and click on them, you can instantly travel to them. And they also do things like the navigation is very, very easy during a race. Instead of, that was one of the problems with Burnout Paradise, which was that the crash nav in that game was basically the street sign would flash up at the top of the screen when it wanted you to turn that way. In this game, you actually have a series of red arrows flying over you and actually pointing the way, and so you can see a turn come from miles away. So it makes that much, much easier. So they've kind of tried to manage this huge open world, but unfortunately it doesn't really seem to serve any kind of purpose, because it is so easy to just pause the game, and then pausing the game, it takes you into what is effectively the main menu of. You can choose to go into the career menu, where you can choose to do career races or challenges, or you can change your vehicle or your driver, or check your discovery of all the different pickups that are in the world. So it doesn't really give you any kind of sense of ownership of this world. You occasionally you'll say, oh, I've been here before, but there are so few features in the landscape that it's not going to happen very often. So for the most part, it's kind of bland and huge, and the only thing the open world aspect really does is make a couple of events unnecessarily difficult by basically the navigation sends you on a very conservative route, and if you're unlucky, a couple of the NPC drivers will go off on a different route and will get there way ahead of you, and you basically just have to watch out for that on the map and follow them, and then you'll win.
If you took out the open world, how would it hold up, say, against something like MotorStorm? How is the racing mechanic?
The racing is fine. I think that the major problem I have with it is that there's no boost mechanic. Because boosting is the thing that really hammers home the risk-reward part of these arcade games, that you can go faster but you're more likely to crash. In this game, obviously, because you're in a big open world, there's less to crash into unless you're driving through a forest or something. But there's no boost mechanic. Basically, the risk you take in this game is, do I drive across this area of open grass, which will probably slow my car down, depending on which car I'm driving?
Yeah.
Or do I stick to the dirt road, which is obviously harder to stay on, but will make me go slightly faster? And they have different kinds of vehicles. It's not cross-discipline, like you can't have motorcycles racing monster trucks like you can in MotorStorm, but they all behave in different ways. So the buggies are really good off-road, whereas the muscle cars are terrible off-road. Okay. And so you have to really try and stick to the asphalt roads as much as possible. And the game does a very good job of differentiating and making it feel different depending on which surface you're on. So when you get onto a proper tarmac road, it suddenly stiffens up much tighter, your tyres start squealing on the road, and it feels much nicer. Whereas if you're on a gravel track, it feels very loose, and you have to start doing Scandinavian flicks to get around tight corners and that sort of thing.
Oh,
so
cool.
What is a Scandinavian flick?
That's a rally term where you brake and flick the car into the turn, and it basically goes around the turn sideways.
You mean drifting?
Yeah.
Yes, like drifting, but on gravel.
Okay, cool.
Well, a drift is a drift.
So,
I guess so.
So are you pleased with your purchase? How does
I'm kind of pleased with it, because the only thing that the open world aspect's really used for is the collection part of the game, which is, as well as all of the challenges which you can either drive around and find, or alternatively you can defeat. The game says defeat these special trucks called Doppler trucks, which will appear randomly in each zone after you complete a certain number of races. And I say defeat, you actually have to just bump into them, and then they don't disappear or crash or anything, but it says, you have defeated a Doppler truck, blah, 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 blah. And now all of the items that you can find of this type are revealed on the map, so you don't even have to drive around, and you can just find them by driving there. So, and all that, and so the open world stuff, all that really does is make you drive to these places to unlock all the achievements, effectively. That, like, there's vista points you can go to, which are supposedly places which have a really nice view, even though I always seem to manage to get to them at night.
Just like Assassin's Creed.
But I get to them at night, so you can't see anything, which is really stupid. So I think, I said this to you, son, I think this game is kind of like my Dynasty Warriors, that I am prepared, and for me the game is fun enough to just drive across country, trying to stay as fast as possible whilst driving through trees and, ducking past rocks and trying not to crash into stuff, that I'm prepared to do what I think most other people find kind of tedious, to just drive around and find all these things to get the achievements. But I think the game is average. It doesn't have as much flair and character as either Burnout or MotorStorm. Like, if you fail an event, it says try again or fail forever, which is really weird. It's got this very odd aesthetic.
It tried, but it didn't really try.
Yes, it got this very weird aesthetic where the world is really weird. Like, every now and again, for some reason, a fighter jet will just fly across the sky, like, really fast, but it makes almost no sound at all. And you find like crashed helicopters and deserted homesteads, and some of the tarmac roads are littered with crashed trucks, and there are also these other just random, almost military-looking vehicles driving around. So there's a kind of story about the game where North America has become extremely damaged due to global warming, and so all of the normal people retreat into these sort of very eco-friendly cities, which of course you don't see any of that. All you see, you're basically one of these crazy people who's like, well, now that no one's using fossil fuels...
I can race!
Yes, I can race, and so people leave barrels of petrol lying around, which you can collect by just driving across the landscape. And again, you bump into them and they don't do anything except fall over. So it's kind of weird, and it doesn't have very much character. I think probably the main problem I have with it, aside from the fact that the open world doesn't achieve anything except make you drive a very long way for no very good reason.
Which were a lot of complaints from Burnout, but anyways.
Yeah, and this is 100 times because the distances are much larger, is that the sound is probably the worst I've ever heard from a racing game. The soundtrack is kind of generic rock stuff like you would expect from an extreme sports game.
Yeah.
But the mixture of the music and the engine noises, they seem to almost cancel each other out, and they're almost non-existent. Like, I really like to hear the engine noise and hear how my engine is performing when I'm driving in a racing game. Whereas with this game, I've actually been turning the volume down on the TV and listening to iTunes, and actually that works really well. Like, because the game actually looks quite good, and the game will sync up nicely with a song, and you're like cresting over a ridge as the sun is setting in the distance, and it starts playing, I don't know, Don't Stop Believing by Journey on iTunes. Then that's a really nice moment, but that's a moment that I created, the game didn't create. Yeah. So I think overall it's a pretty average game. I would rent this if you like arcade racing games, but it'll take you an extremely and unnecessarily long time to unlock everything. So it's like a very, very big commitment if you actually want to finish the game.
Yeah, that's too bad that the open world aspect hurts it. Like, that was the big thing about it. It's just like, well, if you have this big open world and it's not really doing anything, that's really too bad.
The good thing about Burnout is because it's quite a condensed open world.
Yeah, you can get to anywhere quick.
Shortcuts and ramps and cool stuff like that. And with MotorStorm, which is completely level-based, it's very, very scripted. You have alternate routes and all this cool stuff.
Well, that's
but with Fuel, you just have, like, occasionally you'll come across a random farmstead which happens to have a ramp going over the woodshed. You're like, why is that there? That isn't even a road. Why am I...
Well, the thing is that it's fun to drive through Paradise City. Like, getting
really
one place to the next is fun. You don't want to make it this boring, long, arduous journey that it sounds like it is in Fuel. Where you're like, shit, I have to go across 30 kilometers of desert now.
Yeah. And also, another part of it is that, whereas in Paradise City, in order to find all the collectibles and stuff, you actually have to look for them. Whereas in Fuel, if you drive anywhere close to them, as in a 5-mile radius all around your car, you need to, the game will you have seen a vista point, even if it was behind you or to the right or something. And then it's this giant beacon that you can see from miles away, and you just make a beeline straight for it. So there's no discovery. It's just, you either drive a huge distance until you've seen everything, quote unquote, seen everything, or you find these Doppler trunks and they show you where everything is. So it doesn't really have the hooks in it to make it a very compelling game. But as I said, I do quite enjoy just driving across country, getting where I'm going and finding all these pickups, but I think other people find it extremely tedious.
Yeah. Cool.
I would like to rent this.
I would like to rent it, but this makes me want to buy MotorStorm 2 even more.